I didn't go to Gen Con, but I still played games. So today I'm going to get into my favorite surprises and disappointments for the month of July, along with some inspiration thanks to the solo board gaming Reddit that gave me a few different topics that I'm going to talk about today. Hello everybody and welcome to the Board Gamer Girl channel. If you're new here, my name is Natalie and I like to talk about all things board games, but from a primarily solo perspective. Today I am doing one of my regular videos where I am going to be going over the games that I played in July, along with my favorite games that I've played, my surprises and my disappointments. One of the biggest surprises will be that this list got a little funky this month, and that's thanks to something that I want to call production or player empathy. I'll get more into that after I talk about my statistics, but the first thing that I want to talk about today is something that I was inspired to talk about thanks to perusing the Reddit or subreddit solo board gaming. So there's the Reddit solo board gaming community and the regular board gaming community, which I just peruse regularly and talk with different people as things come up. And one user actually put out a question that I think comes up a lot within the community, not just on Reddit, but something about review standards. So the question ended up being, need some board game YouTuber recommendations for people who have enough journalistic integrity to be negative about popular publisher reviews. And that was found in the solo board gaming subreddit. And, you know, this thread had a lot of different things to say, opinions, and it seemed like something that, one, I haven't covered on the channel yet, and two, having been on YouTube for 6 months or so now, and having done reviews, paid sponsorships, different list videos, etc., I feel like as someone who's trying to be as authentic and transparent as possible on this channel, I should probably tackle this topic at some point. So that point is now, thanks to the spark of inspiration from the subreddit community. When it comes to this question in general, I think there's a few things to point out, and one of them is that somehow people automatically assume that journalistic integrity means negative reviews, and I am highly against that opinion. I will explain more in a minute, but I've also said that there is kind of an inherent bias almost no matter what, and I'm not going to say that I don't have any bias whatsoever because I feel like that would also be not truthful. For example, say a friend makes a board game, then I'm going to end up thinking a little differently than a person who is just a stranger looking at a board game that has no connection to the person on the other end. And I also take that into account when dealing with any kind of review. I mean, maybe I take this as kind of like an old school person who kind of transitioned into the time of technology where everyone you kind of dealt with was more in person, and that kind of humanizes people in general. So now that I've been in the board game industry and having worked in the board game industry at certain points, I understand the amount of time and money and just effort and heart to put into a project of either making a board game, doing the art of a board game, being a publisher in the board gaming space. Every step of the way takes a lot of time for a lot of people, and I don't want to negatively kind of poo-poo on their journey. And the other thing is that no matter what, I have inherent bias, like not just myself, but anyone doing anything ever. We come from a specific background, a specific environment with specific experiences that shape us in our opinions no matter what happens. So that's how a lot of the times we can get into disagreements about things where there's no necessarily completely right or completely wrong answer. You can get into philosophy and ethics and go down a whole other rabbit hole with that conversation. But when it comes to review topics in general and people asking for journalistic integrity, there is something to be said about there will always be an inherent bias. And that's just me in general, and I've gone off on a tangent, but part of this is what I'm talking about when it comes to bias in content. So lots of these people have a relationship with either the publisher themselves, the contact at the publisher, the designer, the artist, they've met them in person at conventions. All those things will sway you one way or another for your opinions of a game before maybe you make the decision of, will I buy it, will I not? Will I accept a gifted copy, etc., etc. So that is the first point that I want to put out there. And then I also think that before we get into more about that kind of negativity bias, I want to talk about my own personal experience and how I choose to review or feature board games in lists for reviews, and how I go about doing the paid sponsorships that I've had on the channel. So I think in general, I can only speak about myself. So a lot of this video is my opinions from my perspective and only talking about myself. And I'd like to keep that in mind for y'all. And I mean, based on all of that, you can continue watching the channel or not. Not everybody is for everybody, but hopefully I'm not by myself on this channel forever now. Either way, let's get into it. So when I talk about doing any videos on this channel, the first thing to note is that these are not necessarily easy. Again, I do have my number one rule on this channel is that I want to have fun. And if I'm not having fun anymore, I don't want to do it. This is a side hobby of a hobby that I enjoy. And part of the hobby that I've learned I've enjoyed is communicating with other people in the hobby, sharing different ideas, topics, discussions, and just all that good stuff. And this is kind of, I think now, the format that I enjoy the most, but it definitely comes with a lot of hard work because for me, and for instance, I'll take a topic and then I'll kind of blow up that topic. That's not the right word, but go with me here. Into bullet points. I don't actually script my videos if it's not obvious to tell, but I'll make bullet points so that I'm not on a random tangent that takes you on an adventure to Mordor and you don't know how you got there. I'll make bullet points about how I'm going to discuss the topic of the video, be it be a game, a list video, anything like that. And then I'll have to set up the video equipment, get all of that done and ready, and then actually sit down and film, which takes me probably longer than most people. But then I have to take this and bring it into my editing software and edit that, and then put the video onto YouTube and put through the description and everything like that. So it's usually a multi-day thing for me to get even just one video out, and this I'm sure is regular for everyone. It takes time. So when you're putting time into something, you really hope that you're going to have fun and enjoyment on it, or you're going to be proud of what you're putting out. But I'd also hopefully like to be informative, educational, or add something to the community that I think is important. It could not be important, you could not care, and who cares? So with that, it takes a lot of time to get these videos done in general. I mean, unless I guess there are creators out there that are full-on AI channels, which I don't agree with. I don't watch. I encourage you not to watch. But of course, you've got your own free will. But on this channel, when I'm looking at review copies and thinking of how much time and effort is going into these, I don't want to sign up for a game that I know already from the pitch that I'm not going to like. The other thing is that even if it's a multiplayer game and this channel is primarily solo, sometimes I've already played a game and I already know I enjoy it, and therefore would have that be the exception to the rule of accepting a review copy for a game that doesn't necessarily play solo within the game, and that's when I'm knowingly given a review copy. In terms of negativity, I think this is a subject where this whole idea of journalistic integrity means you're negative takes on its whole other thing, because I actually find that it probably does the opposite a lot of the time. So to try to get this point across, let's say we've got a person that's like a tea spiller or someone that always has the hot gossip or whatever. And that person knows their role and likes that, so they're also always searching out all this dirt, and then everyone always goes to them to find out what is the latest news on something that's going on. And they're popular, but they're popular for what reasons? And those reasons are not ones that I find uphold integrity, because let's say, would you trust this person with your secrets? No. Would you trust this person to give you the full opinion on something? No, I trust them to always say something negative almost. And again, that's my opinion. So there's channels out there that their kind of whole thing is that they're negative, or they have primarily negative opinions on things and hot takes and all that. And those kinds of things are actually more clickbait. Will get you more views for sure, but at a cost of sometimes cutting off that relationship with a publisher. And part of that ends up being like, oh, well, I gave them a copy of my game and they completely poo-pooed on it. They may have like thousands of views for it, but I don't necessarily want to give them a copy again if that's what I'm going to get in return. So review copies, period, they might not end up getting them. But with the amount of views that the channel gets ads in different ways, or Patreon, or all these other different things where they can raise money, and sometimes there'll be a big enough channel that publishers almost can't avoid putting them in their radar, because if they do end up with a good review, it's got a whole bunch of eyeballs on their content. So this whole thing about just being negative means like journalistic integrity can be viewed on either side. And I think what people most want to see is kind of someone, or you'd hope that people that can take their own opinions and judge it from as equal a standpoint as possible. I hope that is a way that I try to review or approach any content, not just reviewed content on this channel. So with that, I also want to mention at the end of this whole spiel about review copies is that I am never going to accept money for a review of a board game. I do not feel like that is journalistic integrity for sure. I don't think that you should ever take money for a review, but at the same time, I understand that part of the reason people have a difficulty with creators doing a review on a game that was gifted is that a game gifted is still, in a sense, money for the review. So again, you have to think of that. Part of my stance on trying to balance that out is that I mention it in the video that I was gifted a review copy. I tried to put it in the description, and therefore it also helps me get the game to the table and to play it if I wasn't able to get it myself. So, I mean, that in itself, that's as straightforward and as clear as I could possibly try to make it. And you can judge based on that, or like, you don't have to listen to me. It's okay. I won't take it personally. The last thing that I want to mention is that since I have had sponsored content on this channel, given that I'm never going to take money for a review, there are typically times where I'm approached by a publisher to do a sponsored playthrough or a sponsored campaign preview. This so far has involved games that I've had experience with before the publisher approached me for things. So the few pieces of content that I have that have been sponsored so far this year include the Moon Colony Bloodbath, which was actually on my 2025 best games list, and I had played that before. I had gotten that copy actually myself before. The Unearth campaign, because I remember playing that back in like, I don't know, what was it, 2016 or 2017, whenever that first released, and being excited for the new Unearth game to be released as a 10th anniversary edition because it was out of print. And then the last one was the, oh my God, superhero, pow, pow, pow! Why do I keep wanting to say Avengers? It's not. It's Invincible. The Invincible Season 2 expansion box. And the publisher reached out to me because I had done a review on the base game based off of a game that I bought myself before they approached me. So my opinions at least had been formed before dealing with the publisher themselves. And then I agreed to a board game preview to kind of review the components and what's in the box and what's changed, the mechanics. And then a lot of these things, again, are games that when I do something for them, I try to leave my review opinions outside of it. So a playthrough, I'm just there to show you how the game plays through. And I mean, based on the playthrough, you can judge for yourself how the game plays and if it fits in with what you like or don't like. And then for campaign previews or board game previews, you're basically just trying to say what is in the box, what is coming to it. A lot of the time, these are games that haven't come to market yet, so it's sharing things that are in prototype form a lot of the time, or just before they go to market. So it's just to let people know what's coming out and not necessarily the review of the product itself. Anyways, I think I've covered most of the topics that should come up. If I have missed anything that you would like to know about, please let me know in the comments below and I will answer you when I am able. But now that we've gotten through that hot and heavy stuff, that didn't come out right. Whatever. The point of the video is to get through my monthly recap. So here are my July stats. So for the month, I actually played 17 games and had 18 plays. So most of the games were played once. But my play count is probably really low because of one specific new activity that I took up. And that is because I found Murdoku. And Murdoku is like a mix of Sudoku and murder mystery, logic puzzles that I've played regularly. I wish that I could log those so that they would count in this so that my plays would go up a lot more. But I'm like halfway through or over halfway through the book myself, and I actually ended up buying family another copy of it because I enjoyed it so much. So I was like, you want to enjoy it too, right? I have a problem. Anytime I enjoy something, I can't just keep it for myself. I have to get somebody else a copy of it so that I can be like, it's good, right? Anyways, with that, I still had some favorite surprises and disappointments for this month. But this list is a little different than usual, and I'll explain more when I'm done the list. So the first game on my favorites list for the month is an oldie but a goodie, and it is Hadrian's Wall. And I don't know the last time that I had played Hadrian's Wall, before July at least, but it had been a while because I think the Anarchy came in, and I was kind of like getting obsessed with that one because it was the new kid on the block. I think a lot of opinions came out that it was actually better than the previous iteration. So it stepped it up in the changes of different track combos and new spaces and different ways that it works. But the Anarchy added this tower defense thing where in Hadrian's Wall, you're just flipping cards and having to defend against the picks, I think it is, in just this area of your paper board. But in the Anarchy, you're having to do round defense for your little tower, and your tower has to be built up with different dice that shows the strength of the tower on all sides. And I think after going back to Hadrian's Wall, I find the Anarchy more convoluted than I would like, and Hadrian's Wall is kind of like the peak iteration of this game. And it's because the setup is really easy. Once you're through the overwhelmingness of two huge sheets that you have to know all the icons for and stuff, it runs so smoothly that setup, when you take it out, you dump out all the resources, you have your 3 different decks, along with like the picks deck. You've got your 2 sheets of paper, your resources, and that's it. And then you just get going. So it still takes a long time, but it always feels like it's like 20 minutes. I find that the clunkiness of the Anarchy makes Hadrian's Wall now for sure my favorite. And now I have to judge on whether the Anarchy is worthy of my shelf space to have both of them. But that was my favorite of the month. The next favorite of the month was a game called Comic Hunters. And Comic Hunters, I had played multiplayer maybe a year ago or so, and I really liked it mostly for the theme. And basically what you're doing is you're trying to make the best comic book collection that you possibly can, and all comics are actually Marvel comics. And the very neat thing is that they actually paid for the proper IP of the Marvel comics. So when you're collecting, say, like the first appearance of Spider-Man in a comic, the actual cover art of that actual comic is on the card. So all of the cards represent the physical comics that they would be, along with the icons that represent if it's a first edition, if it's the first appearance, if there's a big significant battle in that comic. And that's basically the big thing and draw of the game. You're trying to draft cards. The main mechanic is drafting these cards, aka the comic books, in different ways every round. There is a solo mode, which I really appreciate. It's really quick. I like it. At some point, you do need some table space in order to like continue to play the game, but it's really smooth and I itch to play it all the time now. But there are some issues with the game, which I will get into a little bit later. And with that, let's get to the surprises for the month. The surprises for the month include a game where I don't know, I think I got it mixed up with another game. Similar situation when I played Fife and I thought it was The Fog and it was like a survival game, but it's actually a Sudoku-like game. So this game is called Raising Robots, and for some reason I thought it was like a lighter kids game or something. But it is actually a nice blend of, I'd say, put Race for the Galaxy and Wingspan together. And that's kind of what this game feels like. It plays 1 to 6 players. We played it actually with 6 players, and everyone gets their own board, and there are 5 different phases that everyone will go through, but everyone has their own deck of cards, which kind of say how much strength they have to put towards one of the phases for that round. You'll flip those cards over first, and you'll find out how much strength you have to put towards 2 different phases in that round. And then everyone will also have the same amount of cards that depict the different phases of a round, but you can only pick 2 of them to go with your cards on the table at that time. So then everyone reveals their cards, and for the phases that you actually picked yourself, you'll sometimes get like an added bonus of strength for those phases, but you're dependent on being able to go through the 3 or 4 other phases that you didn't pick for that round, based on the power or strength that people have put on those phases that are kind of communal on this communal board. Anyways, that is obviously a trickier part of the game, but it's really smooth and interesting. And then everyone will simultaneously go through their board with each of the phases. And part of those phases include 3 different rows where you can build your robots and have their actions go off, similar to kind of Wingspan. So it's a really interesting mix, and you have end game objectives and personal objectives, and it was really interesting. It took us probably longer, but that was because I think maybe 5 or 4 of us had never played the game before, but it went really smoothly and it was really interesting to play. And we got to play with a pets expansion. It was an easy expansion to add in. I think there's another one that we didn't play with, but really liked that one, so it was a surprise for sure. So for my final surprise of the month, I have chose a game. It's a tile placement game that I've actually played multiplayer before, but I hadn't played solo, and this game is Wispwood. And this is a simple tile placement game with a bit of a twist. The game in general plays over 3 rounds, where you've got, in the first round, a 4x4 grid, a 5x5 grid in the second round, and a 6x6 grid in the third round. And at the end of the game, you're hoping to get the most points. Now, the way that you get points is by trying to strategically draft for different wisps in the market. And every game consists of each wisp having a scoring condition based on the cards that are dealt for that game. So I think every kind of wisp has 5 different variations of how you can score it at the end of the game, along with forest scoring, which are kind of like random regular tiles without wisp that they also score as well. So So during a turn, you will try to draft one of the wisps on the wisp board. And when you draft it, there are actually two different types of shapes that you can create with that wisp. So let's say on one side you have a cube shape, and on the other side you have a line shape. And both of them consist of using 4 tiles total. So once you decide on taking that wisp and putting it into your grid, then you'll take 3 other tiles from the area and use their forest tree side to create that shape within your grid, following the rules of having to be within the grid limits of that round. So if I've got a line of 4, then it has to connect on one whole side of wherever I put it in the first round, because I can't go over a 4x4 grid. For the solo mode, they have a variation on how they'll score for tiles, but you'll take the 4 different wisp types, shake them up, and put them in ascending order with, I think in the easiest mode, the highest points for a wisp is a 6. You'll have those, and then they'll have their own cat on the board and a special token deck that they'll flip over, and it'll tell them how many wisps ahead of their cat is actually within their view for that turn. And they'll take the wisp that will give them the most points based off of their scoring. So it's really easy and quick to take their turn, so you can really concentrate on what you're doing. And because of that, like, I really like the solo game. In tile placement games in general, like, I like to play them with other people, but a lot of the time it's kind of my head down trying to go for different things, or the interaction being like, I was going to take that wisp and use that shape. And there are mitigating factors, like you can flip your cat around so that you can take any wisps and pair it with any kind of shape. And then you flip your cat back in order to just fill some spaces on your board with tree things, because at the end of a round, if you actually fill out your entire grid by the time that the round ends, then you get extra points for that as well. But yeah, solo, it was a surprising experience that for me, I found it way better than the multiplayer experience personally. It's really just a great game either way, because I do like tile placement games, but the solo is just so smooth and so easy to get to the table that I really like playing it solo. But along with this one, I have some words for it. And that is why this month, I don't have a particular game for disappointments, but I'm going to reuse 2 games from my list earlier to put in my disappointments for various reasons. And that is because of something I'm going to call production or player empathy. And you can tell when a game doesn't have player empathy built into the production of the game. For some reasons, yeah, I can understand everything costs money, time, people, whatever, but there are certain aspects of a game where it's like, if this is going to be your main mechanic, the component that is connected to that main mechanic should be as smooth as possible. So for me, with Wispwood, the game is a tile placement game through and through, and while it's tile placement, it's also mainly tile drafting. With this, you have like 120 or so different tiles, and the game does not come with an opaque bag. It comes with a general plastic bag, and you can obviously see through it and see all the different wisps. So during setup, you actually have to spend a lot of time to either stack your pieces so that you can't see any of the wisps while you shuffle them through, or if you put them in a container, sometimes they flip over while you're going inside of it, all that stuff. And again, it pulls you out of the game because you have to worry about these other things. Say you've got them in stacks and someone accidentally hits the table, they fall over, and it's like, oh, I can see things. But with tile placement games, or tile drafting games, I mean, you should have an opaque bag. And the games that do have it, I don't think you think about it as much and how important they are, because games like Cascadia and Calico and Harmonies, and any game where you have to draft tiles out to a certain space, to have a bag just soothes the whole player experience. It doesn't take you out of the game in order to implement something to play the game, like it does in Wispwood. And I think it's not necessarily something that people think about right away, especially because I enjoy the game Wispwood so much. but it's such a core mechanic that it seems like an integral component to have in a game when you're featuring just the base game. And when I'm saying this player empathy thing, I think it would come across during the design process or production process. If people are playing the physical game, then they would know that this is kind of a pain point that could end up being somebody's decision to, do I like the game or do I not? And those are big decisions in a game. The other thing is obviously comic hunters. So comic hunters, the reason that I have this also on my disappointments is the component quality. The main mechanic is card drafting. And with card drafting, you're going to have to shuffle cards. And while the cards are not as bad as, say, a game like Heat, Pedal to the Metal, where I've mentioned that the cards themselves, the quality is like going to the dollar store and getting one of those dollar packs of cards. And if you've ever done that, you know that like there's like this grindy yuckiness and sometimes can be harder to shuffle. In general, like it's nice to sleeve your cards, but when you feel to an extent that you have to sleeve your cards in order for the mechanic to work as well as it should, like in Heat sometimes, but for a game like Comic Hunters where you're shuffling and drafting cards as often as you do, there's kind of this like, it's not, like it's matte enough, but they stick together, they're difficult to shuffle, that I've had to sleeve my game for that. And again, that's disappointing where you have to reach outside of the game to fix what should have been better within the game. Another small point, but it's a small point, where the tokens in Comic Hunters are as thin as tokens that you get in a player set of Lorcana or Star Wars Unlimited or something, like very, very thin paper tokens, and they could have just given us a little bit more cardboard. Again, I know they probably spent a lot of money on just getting the IP to have that as part of the game, and maybe that means at some points you have to go around different corners and make compromises. But the tokens, okay, like whatever, but the cards as the main component of your game should have quality cards to them. So again, when I'm talking about this, I do want to also mention that there is a difference, I think, between production empathy and player empathy in building out the components so that the game is played with the way that it's meant to be played, and you're not stepping out of the experience just to do some organizing kind of stuff. It's different than what I'd call quality of life upgrades. And quality of life upgrades, I find, are things that are nice to haves. So say like a mini instead of a meeple, or metal coins versus just cardboard coins. And those are obviously nice upgrades. They do make the player experience feel better, but they obviously cost more. So they're nice to haves, and the function of the game still gets to play the same. Sometimes where even these quality of life upgrades are kind of ruining the game, and that's like, not ruining the game, but it takes you out of the game. So a game like Castles of Burgundy, and you've got the massive special edition, and you're going to get a specific building every time you want to put that building in your little duchy area. It takes you out of the game, and it kind of doesn't, it slows down the pace of the game, and like that is its own special thing. But for a game, say like a bag builder, where you've got little cardboard, very thin cardboard tokens that you're putting into a bag, and that's your main component, I almost prefer giving me cubes like they did in Invincible, say to a game like Orleans, where they had, or old school Quacks, where it's kind of like the cardboard that you're taking out. The difference in component quality for that is its own special thing. Okay, so my light went out, and then my mic went out on my camera, and I had to wait for that to charge, and then started filming, and then realized that this mic ended up dying as well. So I'm not waiting around for this mic to fully charge again. I will just have it like this for you guys to listen to the end of this video. The end was pretty much just saying that the only caveat to this idea is that dual layer player boards, I think, can be both quality of life improvements and they can end up being essential to the game, dependent on the game and the mechanisms used. So that, and also organizers, when they have organizers for games within the box, like they're nice to have, but especially when you have organizers where you can store the components and then take those components out of the box and onto the player area to utilize. They can also be nice to have things, but in other areas, they kind of end up being essential to the game. Kind of like as I was mentioning with tile drafting games, how you can utilize those opaque or canvas bags as both a storage tool and something so that you can assist in the playing of the game to draft tiles without much setup. So that is the end of this video for, I think, the third or fourth time. This is ridiculous. And yeah, so the only other thing is the Harmony Solo Sunday Challenge is still going on. That'll probably be my next video, as I will actually film my full playthrough for that one. I won't do it every time there is a Solo Sunday Challenge, but if you don't know anything about it, I'll link the video somewhere here. You can join the Discord to find out more information about how you can participate in a Solo Sunday Challenge or create one of your own for this bi-weekly event. The next one will be also announced on Sunday, August 16th, and that one will actually be Newsfjord, which is a favorite of mine and the solo communities. I'll have specific setup instructions for how to get that game played for your Solo Sunday Challenge. And other than that, I will go away. It's very late. It's like 10 now, and I haven't had dinner yet, so goodbye!